Well, you did it again.
What'd I do?
You ruined a bunch of people's day with your review.
I thought people were going to be psyched that we finally reviewed the Bravia 9.
Oh, I know. Well, you were too late.
Yeah.
You were wrong.
Was I?
Well, I mean, a lot of people, the people's days that you ruined,
I was wrong to them.
think you were wrong.
Okay.
In fact, Mike has probably my favorite comment, maybe of the year.
Okay.
ODF, the OLED Defense Force, a symbol. Please tell us all how LCD sucks and micro contrast is the only thing we should care about. We should, what do they copyright that, you know?
Yeah,
that needs to go on.
Assemble.
Yeah, Heart Killer 1991 says A95L, that's a Sony, beats the Bravia 9, though. I don't understand. Music Infected meant to say literally.
Literally, okay.
This guy is literally saying that Mini LED is better than Sony QD OLED series, which is impossible. And then Lane chimes in, this is false. Samsung S95D is the best TV, period.
Wow.
Well, or the S90D.
Okay.
QD OLED is far superior than any OLED.
Okay.
And this one has so many controversial takes, including that I'm missing from the review. Augustus X82 says, it can't compete with the S95D or A95L in game mode. I've realized now that responsiveness in game mode is secondary to the actual picture quality. People want to know how the games actually look in game mode as opposed to input lag. From the reviews I've seen, the picture on this TV looks washed out. That's in quotes. I'm not really sure why. In game mode when next to an OLED. I'm not totally sure what to make of this video. Plus the tiebreaker voice of reason, that's me, his wife, isn't in it. I've never heard anyone review this TV as glowingly as he has here. Does that mean others are wrong? Or does it mean that it's just his taste? As the de facto leader in the field, parentheses, no offense, Caleb, at Digital Trends, Andrew always has the most controversial takes, to the point where people are making videos in response to him and not the product. My comment is not that at all, but I do believe the video can be categorized as another, quote, controversial take. Everyone, welcome to episode 30 of Unplugged. It's all about the Bravia 9 TV from Sony and how Andrew is wrong again.
Wait, that was all one comment?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, kudos.
Well, wait, I'm not done.
Oh, boy. Okay.
I'm not done.
Okay.
According to Justin H., a.k.a. Cowboys 40 2005, says he isn't being argumentative or a hater, but other reviewers like ratings that take actual measurements have shown that this panel does lose color off angle. It's well known that all VA panels lose color off angle, some worse than others. It's misleading. You're being misleading to say otherwise. Now, you could argue that the casual viewer probably would never know or care enough to see that it does. What do you have to say for yourself, Robinson?
To that or all of it?
All of it.
All of it? Wow. First of all, I had no idea I was being controversial. First off, we reviewed the Sony A95L, and if memory serves, I caught a lot of crap for that, not because I was, quote, wrong in my findings that it was my favorite OLED TV on the market, by the way, but that we shouldn't be talking about the A95L in 2024 when everyone knows Bravia everything is out. So yeah, no one watched the A95L review, by the way.
And now people are upset because
we didn't
the
compare.
Bravia 9 is too late.
Right, the Bravia 9 is too.
Sony, see what you've done.
But hold on. Let me get through this. So, yes, we reviewed the A95L. No one watched it, and we got a lot of flack for talking about it pretty much like the week Sony announced the Bravia line.
Which we didn't know was happening.
Which we didn't know was happening. So, yay, us. But we had that TV. We reviewed it. We lived with it. And in that video, I do say that it was my favorite OLED TV that I had seen so far, but that it wasn't like this demonstrable leap over our existing or the previous generation QD OLED from Sony that we have lived with now for 2 years. I think it is, that we use every single day. So
which one was that?
The one before the A95L. I mistakenly said, I think it was the K. We have the QD OLED A95K in our bedroom as a daily driver. That's
the one we didn't review.
That's the one we didn't review. And so...
wasn't it because we got it? And then
we got it, and then they announced the A95L, but then they waited a year to get it to us. This is the way it works, guys. So anyway, it's not that I'm ignoring Sony OLEDs at all. Like I said, we use one every single day. I'm very familiar with them, and I've measured them multiple times. And I think it became apparent to me with this video that a number of people were commenting, not because of the video itself, but because they didn't make it past the title or the thumbnail, both of which are not clickbait. For the record, I stand behind them 100%. But if you watch the video, I explain how I come to such conclusions. And a lot of people in this day and age, I'm sorry, they just don't bother. They see something that triggers them, like this is the best TV Sony has made so far, and they just don't go any further than that. And that makes my job really frustrating because we spend so much time, testing this, trying to figure out its quirks and to give you the best consumer advice that we can. And for people to not make it past a title or a thumbnail because of preconceived notions, if you will, or biases, really kind of makes a lot of what we do sometimes feel futile.
Well, what I think is the most frustrating is that, we do try to respond to a lot of people in the comments. Mm-hmm. And when somebody says, they'll make comments like, oh, well, this is better, or you're wrong, or whatever. I know Andrew tries to have a legitimate conversation to address somebody's concerns in the comment. And I think the frustrating point is after spending the time to try to help or have a conversation with a viewer, they then ultimately admit that they didn't even watch the video. That is where I think the frustration, overall frustration, comes from.
Yeah.
But it's
but also for me though too, it's very apparent when people don't want to have a discussion. Like maybe they even watch the video and they'll bring up certain parts of the video that suit their argument and completely disregard the fact that, like, speaking of the Bravia 9, like I say, I've seen brighter TVs. I've seen impressive processing. And OLED may still have, like, a finger hold on the ledge of, like, absolute natural organic looking imagery. I do say that. But I also say, but for how long? Because kind of like soundbars in home theater, I feel like more emphasis, more energy, more R&D is being put into taking LED, mini LED more specifically, to the ragged edge of what's possible now than what may be sort of being dumped into OLED. Not to say that OLED is going to die or OLED doesn't have its place. I have a feeling OLED is the new plasma with TV enthusiasts, where maybe 10 years down the line when, there aren't OLED TVs anymore, there will still be a very passionate group that's going to be, I still have my LG G4 OLED or whatever it is, Samsung S90, whatever. And you can't tell me that it's, because there's still people that are like, Kuro, and you're like, that was 20 years ago, man. Like, not to say that the Kuro is bad. It was amazing. But it was amazing for what it was at its time. But we have to kind of accept that new technologies, new ways of thinking are going to come along, and it's okay for even the thing we loved most to still be beloved, but not be best.
Our friend Nick has an interesting question for you about, I guess, the timetable that of OLED, whether it's going to still be around or not. Nick says, now that with this TV being so great, do you think they're going to slow down on OLED and start implementing this technology in all of their flagship TVs from here on out? And Frank thinks micro LED will see the end of OLED, but at Summit doesn't see this happening. Summit thinks it's a long way down the road, maybe like 5 to 8 years. But then Michael Beckerman has a very interesting point I want to share with you.
Okay.
Michael says micro LED TVs will likely never be economically viable at the retail level, at least not until they can lower their cost of production by about 75% and boost their production yields by about 50%. Long before that ever happens, other new technologies that don't suffer from these same problems and drawbacks will have already come to market and passed it by entirely. I don't know where they're getting that information from, but
I mean,
what do you think? What do you think about, do you think OLED is on its way out?
I don't know if OLED is on its way out, but there are still some manufacturing deficiencies, if you will, concerns around OLED. It's great that it is finally reaching some larger sizes, albeit it is incredibly cost prohibitive as it gets bigger. I don't think OLED is going to die. I mean, I believe that in the smaller, maybe even monitor market, if you will, or, handheld devices, obviously, it has a place. But as we march ever forwards towards bigger, brighter, better, there does appear to be a bit of a limit in what you can do with an OLED if you want all three of those other factors to come along for the ride. And in that instance, OLED may become just a little bit more specialized and cater to certain markets, whereas mini LED or mini LED, micro LED, I'm with the commenter. I'm super jazzed about the tech, but it is incredibly expensive. And it may, as scalable as it is in practice, it may not be scalable in market yet, as it's in 2024 going into 2025. Getting back to the original barrage of people that were upset with me, I don't believe I came to a controversial conclusion. A lot of people have the Bravia 9 as the best TV out there right now, at least the best LED TV on the market. And a lot of people have it as the best. I know there are a few people that don't, but there are equal number of people that do. That's why I was kind of surprised by the amount of people that were just like, you're crazy. And it's like, yeah, I'm not the only one that has come to this conclusion. And I was able to cross-reference my measurements with the likes of, Caleb and Ratings and a couple other people. And it's like, no, we're all kind of on the same page here. And I cross-reference my Bravia 9 measurements with what I've measured from the A95K and A95L. I'm sorry, I've never seen a delta E as low as what I was able to obtain with the Bravia 9. I've never gotten a delta E of 0.0. You know what I mean? Like that is pixel perfect. Yes, the A95L on a zero or pure black test pattern measures 0.000000 nits. It's off. It's black. Whereas the Bravia 9 is 0.03 or 4. But to the naked eye, near as makes no difference. Like that's off. That's black. So is OLED better in the absolute black department? Of course it is. But I mean, we're splitting hairs at this point, and I kind of it actually just kind of, it's not even frustrating. It saddens me that even in our hobby, like, we can't just let both things be good. We can't let both things coexist. Like, something has to be better than something else. And not just be better, but it has to, like, destroy or kill the other thing off. And it's like, this has never been about Highlander, you know? This is not, and I mean, it just never has been. And the people that were like, oh, the Samsung, this, that. I'm like, I can't recommend anything Samsung makes in the TV department this year. I just can't do it. And if you watched our reviews, and subsequently, if you caught Caleb's review, he backs us up. He actually recreated our problems on a completely different television. And I just, for me, as someone who gives consumer advice, it's like having this experience across multiple Samsung televisions, at least in 2024, gives me pause.
I just want to chime in very quickly about my thoughts about the Bravia 9.
Okay.
I thought that TV was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I agree with you, Andrew. I do believe it's one of the best Sony TVs we've had in for review.
Yeah.
I thought that the colors were so good, and especially right out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this TV, for people that don't want to fuss with calibration, this is going to be a TV that I think you can unbox, throw on the wall or on your cabinet or whatever, turn it on, and just
go.
Just start watching, enjoying the TV for what it is. Off access, color-wise, just viewing, a lot of times, especially with larger televisions, once you get off access, the image can tend to wash out. That's something that is a lot worse on our reference. Oh my God, Sony X90L. It's something you can live with.
Yeah.
Definitely not as bad as what was the one? There was one that was really bad. Was it
early
TCLs? Early TCLs.
Oh my God.
Were really bad. The second you stepped off to the side, everything looked green.
Yes.
And people looked
posterized,
like they were one step into the grave. This TV, to me, looked the same in terms of color and contrast off access as it did sitting straight on. Or the differences are so negligible.
They're negligible so long as you can control the lighting.
Now, I've seen in the comments that some other people have had different experiences. Maybe did we win the panel lottery? I don't know. We can only speak about what we have in front of us.
I think some of the off-axis remarks are based on probably reading measurements from people. And yes, there is going to be like a measurable difference in, say, luminosity or color accuracy as you move your meter to a different angle if you have one of those kinds of meters that lets you read that way. But keep in mind that, let's say the number, this is not a real number, I'm just using it for example's sake. Let's say the straight on number is 5. And then we go off axis and that number is 3.5. That may, like, oh, yeah, see, it changes. And you can point to a number and go, look, it changes. Its off axis isn't great. But in reality, to the naked eye, if that falls within a delta E of 3, it may not always be perceivable, even though I can show you a graph or a chart and say, yes, there is a change. So I hope that the vast majority of people that are going to say the off-axis is terrible, they're basing that on something they have physically seen and not something they've simply read.
I want to move on to another topic,
Oh, okay.
and that is TV size versus image quality, and which one might be most important. Konstantinos says, in my opinion, at the end of the day, the goal is immersion. During movie watching, some of the image quality attributes might not stand out that much. At which point does TV size become the dominant factor versus image quality when considering immersion? For the same price, would we prefer a larger, less capable TV versus a smaller, more capable TV, such as the Sony? I would argue that 90% of people own a smaller TV than what is, quote, recommended based on the viewing distance for maximum immersion, but a lot of them are top-notch OLEDs. What do you think about that?
Well, I will agree that I have a feeling most people either have the wrong size TV to match their seating distance, but you can equally increase immersion even on a smaller TV by changing your seating distance. So I just don't think that people are as well educated about seating distance and the fact that there actually are standards for how far or close you should sit from any given size display. And I'll have you link to one of my favorite seating distance calculators in the description. And I would encourage everyone. I know the website looks a bit old school, like HTML 1.0, but it's a super handy tool because it gives you distances based on two standards, SMPTE standards and THX standards. And it will show you a range, like you should be sitting this close or this far from a TV, and you just enter in your TV size. And it's super, super helpful. And so I think immersion is always the goal, but I also think that picture quality matters and goes hand in hand with immersion, regardless of the size of your television. Because while there's been an argument forever, like you're not going to need 4K or you don't need 8K until you get to really big sizes. Not necessarily true. That's true if you're just growing the size of your television without really taking into account your seating distance for that immersion. But I can tell you, like, we have when we had the 85 Bravia 9 on the wall, which is obviously smaller than our X90L, our seating distance is at the THX recommended distance for our 98-inch X90L. Now, that just so happens to be equivalent to the SMPTE distance for the 85. So I didn't have to move my couch to still be within range. Then I sat a little forward on the couch, I sat a little back, whatever. But I can tell you that when seated properly for maximum immersion, the difference in detail and picture quality absolutely matters. Absolutely matters. And it's probably even more important now as films like La Maison, which is a show, while shows like La Maison are coming to market, that kind of content is so precise and so well captured that it can actually be let down by a lesser display. I'm not saying watching La Maison on the X90L looks bad. It doesn't. It's really still impressive. But it looks demonstrably different and better through the Bravia 9. And so that's why I think that there are some tricks that you can play as you get bigger that will disguise subterfuge, a lack of processing, inherent detail, sharpness, edge fidelity, things like that. But for the best of the best of the best with honors, you need both. You need both.
Well, one thing, speaking of La Maison, I forgot to mention in my little mini review, I forgot to talk about the black levels of the Bravia 9. I'm telling you, it was shocking how close they look to OLED.
Yeah.
It is really, really impressive what Sony has done with this new series. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy that it's not an OLED TV.
Yeah.
I want to bring in a couple more comments because I think that this could help sort of solidify what you're saying and really put into like real world terms what you're talking about when it comes to TV size and image quality. Noisy Boy says, I've pretty well had my mind set on picking up the 98-inch X90L for a soon-to-be home theater room where viewing will be effectively in the dark and straight on with the panel. Do you believe the immersion from the physical size in a dark space puts the X90L on the front foot still, or is the size sacrifice worth it for outright quality? I think they mean going to like the 85 Bravia 9.
Yeah.
Viewing distance is going to float around 4 meters or 13 feet. Keen to hear your thoughts before I commit to one or the other.
At 13 feet, in a light-controlled, call it dedicated theater room, the 85 is just going to look too small. It is. It's not that the TV is going to be bad or that you're not going to be able to enjoy it. It's just going to look too small. It's not going to feel grand enough.
What if they move their seating closer?
If they move their seating closer, that might work, but keep in mind in a home theater, we do have to balance visuals and audio too. So I don't know if they're constructing this room from scratch, if most of it's already constructed, they're taking a 100-inch projection screen down and going with the I don't know. We don't have all of the information. I can just say from a distance of 13 feet, maybe you can't move your seat closer. In a dedicated light-controlled room, I have a feeling the Bravia 9 at 85 inches is going to look a little small and underwhelming, as good as it is. Will the X90L work in that environment? Absolutely. Absolutely. When all the lights are out in our living room and, we're watching a movie, like really watching a movie or a show, yeah, the X90L is fantastic. The closest facsimile, though, to the experience of the Bravia 9 in those larger sizes, don't sleep on the TCL QM8, the new one. It's going to give you a brighter image. It's going to give you richer, inkier blacks that get really close to what the Bravia 9 does, while giving you that physical footprint. Nothing against our X90L, guys. I love it. It's a great TV. But having now had the Bravia 9 experience, compared to the X90L and coming off of the QM8, that QM8 slots right in the middle between the X90L and the Bravia 9 in terms of like it's taking a half a step towards Bravia 9 capability or quality over the X90L.
We have a couple of questions, a couple of viewers who need some advice.
Okay.
They're coming from pretty old TVs.
Okay.
Cameron Pegg says, I've been considering upgrading my Pioneer Curo PDP LX609, but TVs these days haven't impressed me much with picture quality. Is the Sony Bravia 9 a worthy contender? And just for your reference, Andrew, I looked up this particular Pioneer. This is a Pioneer Plasma.
Yep.
It's a 1080p television from 2009. It is not one of the Sharp rebadged televisions.
Okay. Look, anyone that has a Curo or had a Curo comes from the old Plasma time period. If you want a better television, but one that is going to kind of be the evolution of what you're used to, get an OLED. Any OLED will do. Because they're all going to be brighter. They're all going to be brighter. They're all going to be better. But they're all going to give you something that you find comparable.
QJ Empire says, I'm literally ready to purchase the G4, that's by LG, this week. Now this comes across my feed. I saw this TV in the store and it doesn't seem to match any OLED. What are you doing to achieve this type of picture? Is calibration something a novice like me can do, or will I have to pay someone an arm and a leg? And just for your reference, Q came back in a follow-up comment and let us know that they are coming from an older Samsung LED curved TV that has no HDR.
Okay. Look, specifically with the Bravia 9, put it in its professional profile, as stated in the review. Put it in its professional profile. Set, you can set the auto, or not the auto, but the real-time, brightness and adjustable contrast settings, the dynamic brightness and contrast settings. You can set those to taste. I find that medium is really solid place to start, because let's face it, if the TV can be bright, we want it to be bright. But we don't want things to be blown out, and you can set tone mapping to off. You can set it to gradation preferred. You can set it to brightness preferred. I find either off or gradation preferred, for me, gives me that more organic, natural looking image. Brightness preferred with brightness, the dynamic brightness settings or illumination backlighting settings set to high, definitely punches everything up a notch. And you'll get to like those upper 2000, 3000 nit peak brightness levels, which can be very nice. Definitely helps in overcoming reflections. But I find that setting things medium and low is still bright enough. Like, we're still cresting 1000 nits with those types of settings. And even in a room like ours, it's bright enough that if there is any little bit of glare, it does overpower it to such a degree, but it keeps things looking inky and organic and natural. My guess is if you saw the Bravia 9 in a retail environment, it was probably in a standard or vivid type profile, with everything set to high, in which case, yeah, you probably didn't have any sort of gradation subtlety in the highlights, let alone in the blacks. It was just clamped down here, or blown out here and clamped down here, in which case, yeah, you could turn to a OLED right next to it, even if it was a crap one, and be like, oh my God, it's not even close. And it just comes down to, in a retail market, they're trying to get your attention, and the easiest way to do that is brightness and the color blue, which is why standard and vivid profiles are always crazy bright. And when you go and measure them, you can see it with your naked eye, but when you go and measure them, like the delta E's are 10, 12, 13, and the number one culprit is the grayscale, and color accuracy is all blue.
And well, in my opinion, to answer Q's question about calibration and whether that's something a novice can learn, I would say probably, I mean, you would need to actually do some research, and it would take some time plus equipment, which could get expensive. And so I think that makes it more challenging. But if you are like, oh, I want to learn a new skill, then you could pick up some calibration tools. We actually link to what we use in the description. One thing about the Bravia 9, though, like we discussed earlier, is that, or I discussed it, is that I think this Bravia 9 is really great out of the box. And so I don't necessarily feel you need to go in and tweak or calibrate. Andrew says this as much in his actual review. So hopefully that helps. Now, speaking of brightness, which you have just brought up, we have a few questions about brightness and blooming.
Okay.
Well, you brought up the professional profile just a second ago, and that's going to lead me to a Whispers Echoes comment.
Okay.
Andrew, professional seems like it mutes the brightness a bit to me, so I use cinema. Did you notice or measure a difference between professional and cinema as well?
Cinema, again, I don't have everything in front of me, but cinema was marginally brighter than professional, but not like crazy different, within 100 nits. But I do recall cinema being brighter than professional. But like I just got done saying, you can set it to professional, then go in and set the dynamic light adjustments to something a little higher. and be just fine. If you also go into the motion tab or the motion submenu, and maybe this is going to be one of those controversial decisions, but if you just turn off their motion interpolation, I think professional defaults to custom, and it's like +1 and on the smooth and motion, whatever. If you just turn that off, you're going to gain another couple. I don't want to say, you're going to gain some brightness. It's the weirdest thing, but that the way the motion interpolation, as good as it is with Sony, or as much or as little as you want to dial it in the custom setting, it does affect light output. So for the absolute maximum brightest image out of a Sony display, set your dynamic light output settings however you want, but then go into motion and turn off everything Sony wants to do. You'll see a little boost. You'll see a little boost in brightness. And the same thing kind of happens in the game mode. When you're in the game mode, obviously if you enable VRR, you may notice that the image gets a little dim based on, VRR. And then if you want smoother motion, and the more you kind of go in the game dashboard and you smoothen up, less blur, the image is going to get dimmer a little bit each time you do that, which is normal and it's fine and blah, blah, blah. It's nothing to be like, oh, see, Sony suck. No, it's nothing like that. This is how it's done. But you can turn that off for a brighter image as well.
Dark Knight asks, for your blooming test and content, were you testing on local dimming, medium, or high?
All three, low, medium, and high. Watch subtitles on La Maison in low, medium, and high. Didn't matter. Blooming was near as makes no difference, non-existent. So one of the things that I want to caution, and I think I've brought this up before, either in an Unplugged or in a live, one of the things that needs to be pointed out about, quote, blooming, is there's blooming and then there's natural sort of glow that our eyes can do. And any of you watching this that have astigmatism, like I do, which is why I need corrective glasses so that I'm not saying things are worse than they are. Because if I take these off and I look at a light, especially at night or in a dark room without my glasses, I get vertical streaks, and that's astigmatism. That's what happens. But I have lenses that help to correct that. There are things that naturally occur. Like it's our eyes' optics. It's okay for bright white next to absolute black to kind of, in our eye, in how we perceive it, to have a bit of a haze or a glow. Still be sharp in there, but it can have a little bit of a halo. Now, if it has a big fuzzy grayish white orb around it, that's blooming. That's bad. That's what I'm talking about. When that ball travels around, if there's a milky white, not quite black, but not quite white halo going around with the ball, that's blooming. That's bad. That doesn't happen on the Bravia 9 at all. At all, in any of the settings that you just referenced. But I also feel like sometimes when, like I said, we don't always have the ability to see every TV for ourselves, in which case videos like this or reviews and stuff like that become kind of important. But it's also important to realize that you cannot judge certain aspects of a television's performance based on a video, because depending on whether or not the camera operator filming that video, depending on how they're exposing, could make something appear as if it's a problem when it's not. And I cannot tell you how many times I've watched very reputable people who I know personally, like Caleb, or other people that I know have just impeccable reputations, film something and it's got like a bloom or a halo or this or that. And it's like, that's the camera. That's not the television. That's the camera. And some people are good about it, and they'll call it out. HDTV test oftentimes puts a subtitle like, "Hey guys, this is me, my camera, my limitation, not the television." But some people don't always do that, and I think it gives people the wrong impression.
Well, and some people aren't going to notice the little
Or they don't read
blurb,
the thing, and then they
know.
go,
I mean,
"Did you see the blooming?" And it's like, it's the camera. Or it's not even the camera. It's not like, well, then don't use it. It's the settings. If you don't know how to expose and film for these types of things, it's a crapshoot what kind of visual experience someone's going to have watching a copy of a copy of a copy through YouTube.
well, and especially in like shootouts.
Oh, yeah, you should not be judging. You should not be, as an observer of a shootout in a video, you should not be judging any picture. And this isn't me standing up for the Bravia 9. You shouldn't be judging picture quality on a YouTube video. You just shouldn't do it. It's kind of like sound demos on, the internet. It's like, it's not telling you squat.
Let's move on to reflections. Snowy in Okinawa?
Snowy in Okinawa, probably.
Oh, snow
Snowy-
in Okinawa.
Uh-huh.
You got me.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. They say window reflections are highest on my priority list and currently why I am aiming to upgrade from my fancy flashlights. LOL, great comment. Would you say the 98 inchers such as the A90L or the TCL QM8 perform better in this regard?
Okay. Window reflections on the X90L are going to have an effect on the picture more in line with what you may be used to with a projection screen, because the material on the screen itself on the X90L is a little bit more matte. And so reflections don't have as hard of an edge or a streak per se, the way they did on like the Bravia 9. They become just kind of more blurry or amorphous. That may be preferable, but the X90L doesn't get as bright as the QM8 from TCL. And so if it's really bad, the TV itself doesn't have a brightness to kind of push light through that type of a reflection, as soft as it may be. So just keep that in mind. The QM8 from TCL has a semi-gloss or gloss screen. And so reflections are going to be much more, I don't want to say more pronounced, but they're going to be sharp. It's going to be more mirror-like. So you may be able to actually control it a little bit better, because it might just be as simple as closing half a shade just to get rid of that one area that is causing that reflection, in which case you're good to go. But the good news about the QM8, though, is like the Bravia 9 and a lot of other TVs that are bright. It has the brightness where even if you're contending with it a little bit, it can kind of, I don't want to say overpower it, but it can lessen it and make it less of an impactful problem that maybe it would be on an X90L.
Do you think OLEDs handle reflections better?
No, not at all. OLEDs use real glass, which makes them a little bit easier to clean. But they can be just as reflective, and depending on the OLED model that you have, they may not get bright either. Our Sony OLED in our bedroom sits right next to a window, and if we have the shades open, half that TV disappears. It just does. But we close half the blind or half the curtains. Oh my God, it's brilliant. Even with the other windows still open. So there's no perfect TV in the reflection department. If it's a matte screen, it's probably going to handle reflections more along the lines of a fancy flashlight and a projector screen. If it's a glossy screen, it's going to handle it more like a piece of glass or a window.
You may have already sort of answered Photo Brian Gray's question, but just in case, glare handling, we have windows behind the viewing position. How does the Bravia 9 handle reflections, not just off axis, but directly?
Directly behind, I thought it did better. We have a light, which you can see right over my shoulder, that around 4 o'clock in the afternoon comes on and stays on because it's kind of how we light this room. It can wash out the X90L a little bit. In fact, you tell me sometimes, Kristi, that can we turn that light down? It can have an effect. It was visible in the Bravia 9, but it didn't wash out the image. Like I said just a moment ago, the matte screen on the X90L causes reflections to be very soft and broad and not as bright, whereas on the Bravia 9, it's very much like there's the bulb in the lamp, and it's this little orb, this little dot. And if I, but it you see it, but it's able to be dealt with way more easily without completely ruining the image.
Okay, we have just a few more viewer questions to get through, and then we're going to be done.
All right.
Chris Kelly says, I believe you also reviewed the Sony A95L QD OLED. Which would you choose, a 75-inch Bravia 9, 77-inch A95L?
I would choose the Bravia 9. I would, not because the A95L is the worst TV. It's not. I think similar to an answer I gave a user question in the comments, you can always make the brighter, more capable TV darker, dimmer, whatever you want it to be. But you can't always take a TV that's operating at max and get it to do more than it can. And that's where I feel the Bravia 9, it's closed the gap with OLED to such a degree visually that while OLED may still have the most natural and organic image, if OLED represents a perfect 10 out of 10, the Bravia 9 is a 9.5 or better, but it can do all of these other things that OLED can't do. And when you combine those things, it just makes the Bravia 9 more flexible. And I would rather have the flexibility.
Michael Tomets asks, is this Sony compatible with the beautiful Bayo Remote 1 without using Apple TV? And could you integrate the TV speakers as a center channel with a pair of B&O 8s? I'm a picky newbie versus an experienced expert.
I do not have a BO remote here, so I don't know. I would have to assume that you could program your BO remote to operate the Bravia 9.
Without using an Apple TV?
Yeah, I would think so. That is a question for a Bang & Olufsen dealer. As for using the speakers,
the TV speakers as a center? I don't think you can do that.
Well, some Sony TVs do have binding posts. They are push pin style, meant to take speaker cable. How that would work with a Bang & Olufsen, though, I'm not certain. These are all questions, unfortunately, that are best suited for a Bang & Olufsen dealer, because they are going to be in possession of not only the knowledge of how to program the remote for whatever TV you're considering, but Bang & Olufsen has a lot of like ancillary accessory products that help their ecosystem interact with other third-party products like a Sony display that they don't necessarily advertise that they have or that they put on their website, in which case you would be surprised what they can do, but you have to go to them and ask. And so I don't want to speak out of turn here. I don't know if it's possible. The remote thing I think is pretty possible, but the rest of it I don't know.
At Jayco TV wants to know if you've tried the Sony Core Movie service and the Real IMAX Enhanced mode for Disney Plus.
I have tried the Core Movie service. It's great. It's nice, especially if you know you want to watch Sony content. Just understand it may not have everything that you're looking for, but it is meant to put Sony out there in their best light. I mean, it's the stuff that I've been able to view on it. It looks really good. It's just, it's Sony services. It's Sony's service. And sometimes you're like, well, I don't need any of that right now. So then you're going over to Netflix anyway. You're going over to Apple TV, Paramount Plus, whatever. What was the second service?
Real IMAX enhanced mode for Disney Plus.
Yes, I have put on IMAX mode on Disney Plus. It's been a minute, but I wasn't necessarily like, I guess I didn't know what necessarily to expect. But when I watched, I think it was one of the Marvel movies, in there with the new IMAX enhanced whatever, I was kind of like, I guess it's better. I guess it's different. I guess it's something. Not nearly quite the jump as like going with like a Kaleidoscape and watching something, a movie at like 100 megabits per second or 75 megabits per second, as opposed to Blu-rays 18 to 22 or 24, let alone streaming down in like the 7, 8, 9, megabits per second. Like that's a bigger jump, like something like a Kaleidoscape or a very, very high bit rate transfer out of a movie server pays bigger dividends in my experience than any, like even Sony Bravia Core or IMAX mode.
Well, that's it then.
That's it? I've angered enough people for one day.
I mean, I've going to the comments right now. Like you've angered a few more.
Oh, great.
I
have a feeling I'll anger some people for about 6 more months. Till the next one.
Sam Zepp says, "LOL, what a joke."
What a joke.
What a joke.
What a joke. You know what? You're right. What a joke.
What are you even doing here?
I don't know. I would like to wrap this up because I now have to edit it. This is probably another one of those hour 15 unplugs. So what number was this?
30.
30.
Can you believe it?
Can't. And yet I can. All at the same time. So Unplugged 30. Thank you guys so much for watching. Tune in Sunday. Tune in Sunday. You won't have to wait 3 years for our opinion of the new Sonos Arc Ultra. Sunday. Do you have anything else you want to add before we get out of here? Thanks for hitting the mic.
No.
All right.
I think the Bravia 9 is a great television.
Awesome TV.
And
stand by everything I said.
If you feel differently, keep it to yourself.
No, you can share it.
I'm
just be
kidding.
respectful.
Like what you like.
Like what you like.
I honestly, one thing, I was thinking about this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's been so much, I honestly didn't expect to see this review make people have so many feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, honestly, I hope you guys know, like, we don't care. Not that we don't care about your thoughts. When a product comes in, like, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. Mm-hmm. Like, if it's going to be the best thing, the worst thing, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just going to, whatever it does is what it does. Mm-hmm. And we're not setting out to ever, like, be controversial or, ruffle the apple cart or.
Ruffle the apple cart? My God, you and common vernacular in phrases.
Does it rock the apple cart? What is it?
Upset the apple cart, ruffle feathers.
Whatever. See, it's not intentional. It's just, it is what it is.
You see what I'm dealing with here? She does this when we write scripts for reviews too. She's like putting in this quippy little line. I'm like, that's not how the phrase goes. Yes, it is. It's like, no.
My way is better.
I'm a bull in a china shop. It's bull in a china shop. That's what I said. No, you didn't.
I don't think I ever said that. I know I got the saying wrong about the china. No, I called it a china cabinet.
Bull in a china, yeah. Bull in a china cabinet.
I didn't say bowl.
All right, guys, we got to get out of here. So thank you so much for watching. Tune in Sunday, Sonos Arc Ultra review. And until then, have a great rest of your Friday and start to your weekend. And we'll see you on the next video.